multiple bipartisan Congresses, Republican and Democrat alike, had endorsed. So I was kind of teeing up the question, but do you believe that federal administrative agencies are required to operate based on congressional or executive action when the two are in conflict?
Well, I do believe that that the first step is to make sure that law is written clearly so that you avoid these conflicts. And I think Washington, one of the things that might be useful is to have a single subject rule or something, some version of that. I don't know if you have that in South Carolina. In Florida we do, which simplifies the laws, and the laws are more prescriptive. They actually don't give as much leeway to the executive power. But if you give broad deference in how you write the law, then it creates this confusion for starters. DACA and DAPA, the DREAM Act kids and their families, this is what the president did. He took prosecutorial discretion, which meant that he has the power by law to take on a case-by-case basis, allow people to stay in for unique circumstances. And he basically used the pen and the phone for 5 million people. No discretion at all, and it is clearly, you're going to win that case. That is clearly way off the reservation. I don't know the specifics of the Yucca Mountain deal. I do know that one of the ironies of this is that we continued to get taxed on our utility bills for the repository that was not going to actually be built. And finally, someone recognized that that was against the law as well. There's a reserve account of $30 billion. It could have gone up to 40 or 50 if it never stopped. So thank God for attorney generals like yours and Scott Pruitt, who's a big supporter of mine, who led the charge on Obamacare, because it's reining in executive power. Another place where you could do this is on regulation, where you pass a law, the executive then goes through this convoluted rulemaking process, and I believe it's appropriate to have an up or down vote in Congress to make sure that the executive rule matches legislative intent. Anything over a certain cost, to have an up or down vote within 30 days. Those kinds of things, I think, are the proper check. The best way to deal with this, though, is put a president in there that respects the Constitution, for crying out loud, and doesn't use executive power he doesn't have.
You mentioned something. By the way, I don't know if y'all knew this, South Carolina, that $30 billion fund that we've all been, your parents and many of us have been paying into on your utility bill, you pay a fee on the use of your electricity that goes into a fund that funded all the exploration of Yucca Mountain up to a tune of $30 billion. South Carolina was the third highest paying state. So the president or the administration basically said, thank you for the billions you sent to us, we'll keep the money, you keep your own nuclear waste. So that's basically what happened. We talked about immigration as an executive overreach, and before I go to the immigration question, which of the president's executive actions do you disagree with the most, and are there any that you agree with?
There might be. I mean, I'm sure there are non-controversial issues he's done, but the ones that I know about are the ones that I completely disagree with. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm assuming that I don't know all of them. I mean, because there's ministerial things the executive branch does that do no harm. But the EPA rules, the broad interpretation of the Clean Water Act for the waters of the United States.
That's coming up.
You're going to win that one, I hope. I mean, that is extraordinary. Basically, navigable waters was the definition of what federal responsibility went to, no more than that. Now the definition goes way beyond that to include culverts or basically any water body. You could have a swamp, you know, that's fine. There should be some role there. That if you have a drainage ditch in your farm, or you have a retaining pond in the, out here at the university campus, the federal government should have no say in that. But this law is broadly interpreting this, and the EPA has no capability of monitoring it. That would be maybe number one. The ozone rule that just came out, I think that's on my top 5 list. DACA, DAPA, I think is clearly unconstitutional. I do think DREAM Act kids ought to be treated differently, kids that have no nexus to their parents' countries, but you do it the right way. You go to Congress, you change the law. If you can't get it done, you can't use authority you don't have. The Clean Power, so-called Clean Power Act. Just again, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm kind of a nerdy person about this stuff. Up till now, the interpretation of the Clean Air Act was that the EPA had the ability to regulate inside the fence. So any power plant or any particular industrial use, you could regulate what goes on inside the plant. Now they have, for the first time ever, extended that to create the entire country. In effect, all 50 states now have to have plans to reduce carbon emissions. And just as a reminder, we've reduced carbon emissions in this country by 10% in the last decade, not having anything to do with the federal government rules. It happens to be American exceptionalism, American capitalism, American entrepreneurialism, American private property rights. American risk takers have had an explosion of clean natural gas, and that has created the reduction in carbon emissions. And every time the command and control crowd in Washington tries to impose these rules, all it does is limit people's ability to get a job and have rising income. And so across the spectrum of industry, I think this president has gotten it wrong.